Hello, everybody. It's Andy here from Biohazard Declassified. I trust you're having a fantastic Saturday evening, Saturday afternoon, Saturday morning, wherever you are in the world. We've got a very special edition of the Biohazard Declassified podcast. We're joined with YouTube creator Ink Ribbon. Say hello, Ink Ribbon. Mr. Cole.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so I obviously really appreciate you coming on today. We're going to talk about all things Resident Evil. So give a little introduction. What is Ink Ribbon? What do you do over on YouTube land? And yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here. Ink Ribbon is my YouTube channel. It's all about mostly Resident Evil stuff. I tend to focus more on like classic games, and by classic I mean like PS1, PS2 era. But yeah, I love Resident Evil, and I've been doing this for about 4 years, and it's so crazy that the game that I love has now become like my job, and I've met so many passionate fans like the ones watching right now who just share that love of Resident Evil that we can't seem to explain to anyone else, and there's just no way you either get it or you don't. But yeah, I love Resident Evil, and that's Ink Ribbon in a nutshell.
But what about Ink Ribbon the person? Who is Ink Ribbon?
Oh, God, how much time do you have? No, I'm just kidding. No, I actually I'm working on a video essay right now, kind of talking, not to get too like philosophical, but I had the realization that growing up, I didn't have friends and I kind of didn't have the best family life. And I realized that playing Resident Evil, I mean, these characters in the game sort of really shaped who I am as a person. These were role models that I looked up to. And I think that's part of where the real love and passion for these games comes from. Not just Resident Evil, but kind of all video games. And I'm sure some of you guys feel the same way. It can't just be me. But yeah, games are just a really big part of my life. And I guess that's reflected in my content, but I don't know.
Yeah, and you have, obviously, it goes without saying, with a name like Ink Ribbon, you're very, very much based around Resident Evil. So what are your standout moments from Resident Evil in general? What are your favorite Resident Evil titles?
Well, the original two by far will always be my favorite, because that's the game that not just led me to love Resident Evil, but led me to pursue an education in video game design, because I remember watching the opening of Resident Evil 2 over and over and over, and I was just like, how do people make this stuff? And it was just the most amazing thing. And I think the best thing about the classic Resident Evil games that I really think is not encapsulated anymore in really any game is that sense of wandering around in places where there's supposed to be people and there aren't. I mean, I know that's kind of the world we're living in right now, but there was something just so, I don't even know what the word is. It's like magical, but also kind of spooky, and I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
so would you say that it was the setting of Resident Evil 2, which really, like the setting of Raccoon City in general, the build up, and for me, it was how it was kind of like set up like a Hollywood movie in a way, but like not like a B movie, like the original Resident Evil, like where it was in a house and all that sort of thing. But it was like, holy shit, this is on like a super large scale. Was that what captured you, or was it the characters? Or
definitely, I've always said this, and people sometimes don't listen to me, but the environments in Resident Evil are the main characters. I know that you're playing as people, but it's always about the environment. You can hear the theme from the RPD, or you can like see a picture of the mansion and you're immediately brought back to where that is. Whereas, the characters are kind of all over the place because they're in a lot of games. And I know this is a really kind of unpopular, controversial Resident Evil opinion, but I wasn't really a fan of the Resident Evil 1 mansion setting. Maybe because I played 2 first, but it just didn't speak to me the same way that 2 and 3 setting did, because I love the city and the I don't know, the aesthetics are just very different from 1, and then 2 and 3, they all kind of had their own thing, but the environment's by far most important thing in the Resident Evil games.
Well, I agree with that 100%. 2, going between the RPD, or there's so many locations that have so much character, and that's what really makes you remember the games is not necessarily, playing through as Leon or playing through as Claire, but it's the locations themselves. Like, when you enter the main hall of the RPD, when you enter a safe room, like, in 3 when you're about to, when you go into the clock tower, like those locations have just as much characterism as the actual playable characters do.
Definitely.
So a nice segue into that was, you obviously said you specifically said that it was the original Resident Evil 2 which captured it for you. What would you say about the Resident Evil 2 remake, and why do you still revert back to the original over the remake?
I think it really just comes down to the whole, you can't beat the original. I love the Resident Evil 2 remake, and I am so grateful that they made it, and they made it so I still think about it and I'm like, I can't believe it actually happened. But it's not that it's bad, it's just different from what I know. The layout is different, and then like they did a lot of stuff, like turning off the lights was one of the biggest things where I was like, whoa, like my mind was blown because I never even thought of doing that, but it made the RPD a lot scarier. And, wetting the floor, like having that bathroom flooding so that you have that nice shine. That's a big like movie magic thing that they do, is wetting the floor, so that it gets like reflective. But I don't know. It's just, I guess the fixed camera angles really allow the game makers to have the player see what they want to see. Whereas when you're walking around in the remake, you can just look wherever you want, and there's not really a focal point. Sometimes they can kind of set up, hallways to be a focal point, but that's kind of a composition nerd game dev thing. They're both great. It's just, can't be the original.
I think nostalgia must play a little bit into it. But what about obviously the portrayal of, like the contrasting portrayal of characters between the original with Paul Haddad and the new Leon with Nick Apostolides?
I think he did an amazing job in the remake, because there's different versions of Leon, who's my favorite male character in the series, if you couldn't tell by my hair. And he starts off as a rookie. He's inexperienced, and he has a really strong sense of justice. And, he's still experiencing all this for the first time. Whereas Resident Evil 4 Leon is very hardened, and he's already been through so much stuff that, he's like, I'm a man now. And I don't know how to say his last name, but Nick did a great job in capturing that spirit of sort of like the younger rookie Leon,
Yeah, you could. I think you could definitely tell by his just almost the innocence in his voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think if he was going to be if supposedly there's a Resident Evil 4 remake in development, shout out biohazardcast.com for writing an article on that. But my fear is that because he had such an angelic voice in Resident Evil 2 remake, how that transition where Leon's now a little bit older, in the Resident Evil 4 he had a little bit more of a grit to his voice. What were your thoughts? Do you think that Nick, because of Nick's performance in Resident Evil 2, he should transition into Resident Evil 4 if there were to be a remake, of course?
If he's a voice actor, I don't see why he couldn't. I think it really comes down to Capcom's decision. I'm still salty about Allison Court not being Claire, but I know that that's my problem, not theirs. But yeah, I don't think there'd be any issue with him doing the voice if he can.
Yeah, I know there was actually a massive controversy with Allison Court not being the Claire Redfield, but I think sorry, Jesse, you're going to know the voice actor's name. Her name escapes me, but she did a cracking job as Claire.
Oh yeah, no, she did great.
Yeah, that's Stephanie Pencelio.
That's it. Thank you. Yeah, she did an absolutely fantastic job on that. And obviously, with Resident Evil 3 coming out during the start of lockdown, I mean, it's the most polarizing remake today, I would say. But what are your thoughts on the Resident Evil 3 remake?
Well, I did a review, and a lot of people were, like you said, polarized in the comments. The number one thing that I tell people is to think of it as a reimagining, not a remake. Resident Evil 2 Remake was a true remake from head to toe. And yeah.
Splice it, splice. As you were, sorry.
No, it's just they changed way too much for me to have the amount of passion I did for the Resident Evil 2 remake. I'm sorry, but I didn't even realize how important the clock tower section was until it was gone. I didn't know how iconic and special it was. And then when it wasn't there, where it was like, hey, wait a minute.
You pulled a sneaky on us here.
But no. I loved the Carlos redesign. I think Jill is a much more fleshed out character. It's the first time I found her to really have a true personality, which also angered a lot of people. But there's so many things that were great about it, and then they just kind of dropped the ball, in my opinion. I know that some people loved it, and overall it was a good game. It's just I don't think it deserves the title of remake.
So if you were Mr. Capcom, and you had you presented this game, what would you have done differently?
Well, as I said, the environments are the most important thing in Resident Evil, and I think that's really what it came down to. Instead of the sections that I mentioned, like the clock tower and all that, we got a Indiana Jones sequence with a rolling giant bobblehead. I have no idea where that came from, but when I look back, the clock tower and then that 3 path area where one leads to the gas station and one leads to the train area, as well as the newspaper office. I was so excited to see all of those places that were just not there at all. And it was like, whoa. And it was kind of, they set it up to fail because all the screenshots showed survivors running around, and you could save people. Oh God, that bobblehead, I hate it so much. The worst part for me. But it made it seem like, oh my God, it was kind of giving me Outbreak vibes. I was so excited. And then it was just, it ended up being like Raccoon City was like a square mile, and that's all you got to run around in, which from a game development standpoint, I kind of understand that because it is an enormous amount of work to make all of those assets and lay out all of the city streets and all that stuff. But, don't show us those screenshots to get us excited for something you're not going to deliver on.
Yeah, and it's kind of a funny thing because, as many iconic places as there are in the original Resident Evil 3, they brought so many more, new locations in the remake. And that's cool and all, but it was, I like you said, you expect to see the newspaper office and so several other locations. It was neat to see Raccoon City a little bit more alive than in the original, but it's like they hit where the base level of that mark of making it more fleshed out and alive, and then just stopped.
Yeah.
Versus going the extra, because like you said in the screenshots, it looks like they kind of went the distance, and I'm not gonna call it an open world game, but it gave the appearance of having a larger environment than what it did. Especially because seeing what they could have done in those areas like Moon Donuts and where the toy store is and the grocery store that you can go into, or even the beginning of it when you first meet Brad and there's the diner and stuff on the left-hand side, everybody that's been doing the camera or the float through wall hacks. And so showing off all these super fleshed out interiors in some of these places that you don't get to visit at all. Even if it was something, as simple as, picking up some handgun ammo or something, it would have been really cool to experience a little bit more of the streets of Raccoon City, like we did in the original game, but have some of these new environments as well as the old ones.
Definitely. And there's another big thing that was severely lacking was there was no puzzles. I think there was literally one puzzle and it was really, really easy. But remember the music puzzle and the water puzzle and all of those?
Oh, the water puzzle, Jesus.
I love the water puzzle. I'm the only person on earth. I found it endearing. But I also found out that there was a lot of people who couldn't do the music puzzle, people who were legitimately tone deaf. In I think the original release it was randomized and they had to change it to be here's the always solution, and I was like, oh, I never thought of that, but still bring it back.
Yeah, because that was kind of the disappointing thing of the remakes puzzle was, the the majority of them were almost like they weren't even puzzles; they were just fetch quests. It was, like to do the thing in the subway station was you just had to go find 3 gems. It wasn't trying to manipulate anything. It was just hey, go find 3 things and bring them back, and you can unlock it 3 different times. Or I mean honestly, the closest thing to a puzzle is really the reactivating of the subway. Everything else is like even the vaccine creation stuff is again just another fetch quest. It's just go grab these 2 things and bring them back. And I think it has a slight element kind of like in when you're fighting the ivies and stuff in 2, where you have to kind of change the solution amounts a little bit. But I mean at the base of it, it was just go pick up items, bring them back. It wasn't an actual puzzle.
And I think that actually brings up just a massive overarching point. And you guys might have to correct me on this, but I'm pretty confident that Resident Evil 2 was made in-house, but Resident Evil 3 was actually farmed out to a third party studio. So for me, you can definitely tell the love was poured into Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. It still had love poured into it, but it's kind of like your stepdad, it wasn't quite Resident Evil 3, but it kind of did the best job it could under the same circumstances.
Yeah, it was sent to, I think the company's called M2, which is sort of like, people jokingly call them like Capcom's B team. But I think one of the biggest problems stems from they were working alongside Resident Evil 2, but not together. They were like kind of doing their own thing, working off the same engine and mechanics. And they went in drastically different directions, as I'm sure you saw. But I think they knew that 2 was probably the more important game to focus on. I do wish that wasn't the case, though. But
well, I mean, it seems like, hearing some of the things that we know about both of their developments, that the fact that they were developed side by side up to a certain point and originally meant to release together, everybody always talks about how Resident Evil 3 feels almost like a DLC, which it always did. I mean, if we're going to be perfectly honest, Resident Evil 3 was always, Resident Evil 2's DLC. We just didn't have it back then.
Yeah.
But I get the feeling of the DLC portion of it, because I mean, in reality, we were supposed to get 2 and 3 as a side by side launch, until whatever development problems or whatever. They haven't been specific on why 3's development got pushed out an extra year. But it definitely feels like it was meant to release alongside 2. And I think it honestly could have made 2 a little bit more interesting to have released that way, because I think we would have seen a lot more of 3's mechanics brought into 2, at least, as far as like character movement and stuff, had it, released at the same time. Because I don't believe that they would have added on special, like Jill's dodging mechanic. I don't think that would have been exclusive to a DLC. I feel like that, had they released together, something like that probably would have been in both games simultaneously.
So obviously on that point, we're talking about not negatives, but the constructive criticism of Resident Evil 3. Kai, what do you think was good about Resident Evil 3? What did you actually really enjoy about Resident Evil 3?
Well, like I said, the characters definitely were stepped up, and I know that a lot of people were mad about Carlos's redesign or stuff like that. But I think all of the characters were so the bar was raised. They all felt completely real and fleshed out, and it wasn't any more of the because in the 90s things were different and you didn't have to try as hard. But now they feel like really well written characters, and just like Resident Evil 2, the lighting, the environments, everything really was well done. I liked the creature redesigns too. I think the hunters were great, and at first I hated the beta hunters, gamma hunters, sorry, the water ones, and I kind of grew to love them. They're like giant evil rotisserie chickens trying to kill you. The feeling that I first got when the Nemesis sprinted at me was just full on terror that I have not felt since I probably was chased by him for the first time in the original. So they definitely got that down. And also the unlockables were really cool. I'm really good at headshots in that game. So the I forgot what it's called. It's something that starts with an R, but there's like this electric gun that it only does damage if you do a headshot or hit their weak point. So like, unless you hit their head, you don't kill them. But if you hit their head, they instantly die. And it was so much fun to go through a playthrough with that thing.
Oh yeah, Andy is very famous for his poor Raiden playthrough where he soft locked the game with it.
Yeah, so the long and the short of it, the clock tower. I thought, do you know what I'll do? I've just unlocked this Raiden. I'll quickly stream me doing a Raiden only playthrough. Obviously, it's not going to be difficult. I just go through the game and I complete it. But I when you got to the clock tower nemesis, there's no weak point unless he gets turned over. So I didn't bring any weapons with me. So I just ended up like completely. But I couldn't get past it.
Yeah, same thing happened to me, except I had a previous save in the sewers. So I was like, okay, I'll just go get my grenade launcher or whatever. But sympathy, I totally understand.
No, live dangerously, never safe. It's way of life. So obviously, we're talking about the launch of Resident Evil 3. There was a side game which did come out at the same time as Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil Resistance. What are your thoughts on Resident Evil Resistance, and how long realistically do you think it's going to last?
I just did a video on it. I was just playing it this morning while I was working out. I actually love it. I am a stickler for Resident Evil Outbreak. Outbreak is like in my top 3 Resident Evil type games or whatever, and it's not Outbreak, but I'll take it. You know what I mean? And from a game dev perspective, I know that they've had balance issues and they keep going back and forth, but I think it's a really well-made game, and I wager to say I like it more than Resident Evil 3.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
I know that I'm about to be shot down and everyone's going to disagree with me, but that's my 2 cents. Go ahead.
So I guess for me, they have. I preface the point. I really enjoy the game. I think it's a nice different direction. That's something I wasn't expecting from Resident Evil, from Capcom specifically. But I do feel like it has made a few, especially with multiplayer gaming now, it has made a few fundamental errors which will definitely hamper the longevity of Resident Evil Remake. One being the lack of cross-platform, no cross-play, which for me now should be relatively industry standard. We know it works with stuff like Fortnite, Call of Duty. I think Dead by Daylight has got an element of, and World War Z has got an element of cross-platform. And the second one is lack of dedicated server support and the reliance on the mastermind peer-to-peer. The mastermind always being the host, I think, hampers it a little bit.
I am kind of a total noob when it comes to multiplayer games. I can't even tell you what the last multiplayer game I played before this was, but yeah, so all that stuff, I get it, but it's all new to me. So I just kind of like, I don't care about that. Like, as long as I can play the game, whatever. However, I do hate that I have it on PC and my progress is amazing on my PS4, but on PC, I'm like at level 1 on everything. So that's kind of.
And the community, I mean, community for PS4, what I've found is the community for PS4 is kind of big, but the PC section is really small. And another thing that I feel like that they could be moving in a direction on is, it's come out with Resident Evil 3. It's been a couple of months now. Let's just make it a standalone game and kind of revitalize the community on the second run on Steam or something.
Well,
like that.
I haven't talked about this to anyone, but now I have an opportunity to. So I like to look beyond the curtain as much as I can and kind of guesstimate what's going on. And they were very clear when they came out and said Resident Evil 3 is done. It's not getting any DLC. It's not getting anything else. Like, it's done. However, Resistance is just constantly rolling out with new stuff. And to me, that signifies that Resistance has more of a future. Like, they're going to do a sequel or another version, or it's going to, I don't know. They're doing something with it, because you wouldn't be putting all this time and money into a game that isn't doing well. You know what I mean? So I don't know what that means, but that's just my assumption.
Could we see it go free to play?
Oh, that would be amazing, because then you wouldn't have to wait really ever for people to connect.
Yeah, and I mean, and I've said that, since Resident Evil 3's launch, like if Resident Evil 3 is kind of a finished product, but we know Resistance is going to continuously get updates and stuff. There's no reason to not make it a standalone game. I mean, they could split them right now. You could have a dual pack. You get 3 in Resistance for whatever price, or you pay $15 and get Resistance. I think that's honestly the smarter route Capcom needs to go, especially if they plan on continuous out these rollouts. We've seen the I think the roadmap that they launched a couple of months ago went up to July, but I have a feeling they're not going to just, oh, hey, July's here, this is the last of Resistance updates. I mean, I see, as long as there's somewhat of an active community, Resistance is probably going to be around till they kill the kill the servers for current gen consoles. So yeah, I don't see the point of not making a standalone version.
And I think that there's so much potential for it to go in a really positive directions for all Resident Evil fans. And I get too excited when I think about this, because people on Twitter started talking and like imagining, and I was like, oh my god! But imagine if Alexia and Alfred Ashford became masterminds, and then they could send Nosferatu after you, or
so
if they added Claire or or Leon or some of the other characters, because they've already stated it's non-canon, which means now they can go crazy and do whatever they want, and it doesn't affect the main story. And this is their license to do that. So I'm really, really hoping that they see that opportunity and go for it. But we can't control that. We just have to. Well, we don't have enough clout.
Yeah, that's it. Well, maybe if we all band together.
Signal flares, Capcom.
Please,
we love you.
They did a similar thing with Operation Raccoon City, didn't they? Where they had a heroes, where it had because obviously you didn't play as the main characters in Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City, but you could play as Leon and Claire. I think Jill's in it as well, and a couple of other people from the Raccoon City miniverse. So yeah, they've done it before, and it would be it's endless. I mean, imagine. I think the big one that was spoken about last time I spoke about Resident Evil Resistance was actually Jack Baker and Lucas. Lucas is a mastermind, and then Jack Baker as the
that would be really easy for them to implement. Just use combine the Tyrant and Nemesis, but instead of a rocket launcher, it's a sledgehammer or whatever. What did Jack have?
The shovel. He had the shovel, and then that weird spiky stick thing he'd chase you around.
Or Marguerite with her, her.
And these are all assets built into the RE engine, anyways. So I mean, we already know they're compatible with. You don't have to change much to it.
Yeah, and then the levels, throw in a classic Resident Evil level, that people recognize. Oh yeah, you're set. People would be so happy. But what do we know? We're just the fans,
Indeed. We're just dedicated Resident Evil creators. We don't know a lot about Resident Evil. But that's quite a nice segue that we're talking about Resident Evil 7. And before we speak about the massive elephant in the room, which was discussed at that PS5 reveal, that little PS5 reveal was a couple of weeks ago, what did you think about the direction that Capcom went with Resident Evil 7? Because I felt like with Revelations 2, they were kind of dipping their toe back into the water of survival horror. And then all of a sudden they just went, right, fuck it, balls deep, let's do it. Survival horror at its best. What did you think of Resident Evil 7?
Well, the general consensus that I agree with, as most of the fans do, is that it was a great game, but it wasn't Resident Evil. We didn't have any of the locations that I have mentioned way too many times now, that we didn't have any characters that we really knew, except for Chris, but I'm not even going to get into that. But I absolutely loved PT. I don't know if you guys got to play the demo. That was the demo for Silent Hills that you can no longer get anymore, except for fan remakes of it. But I was foaming at the mouth for more of that, because it was so scary and so good. And then 7 came out and kind of filled that void, and I was like, oh, okay, this is great. It's it's Resident Evil flavored, more or less, but I'll take it. And I want to play that game in VR so bad, but it makes me so unbelievably motion sick, even though that's the game I bought my PSVR to play.
I've done exactly the same thing. I've bought PSVR. I was streaming it. I've done a couple of streams on it, and I'm 5 minutes in, and I'm like, oh, I'm really struggling here. I'm really struggling.
Yeah, but no, because in VR, I mean, oh my God, I mean, things jumping at you, like you're like screaming and flailing your arms. It's great. Actually, that's a great idea. Hold on, I have to write down that video idea. Trying out different types of VR sickness remedies to see what works.
That would be, yeah, because I hear ginger is one. If you have some ginger, whether it's ginger biscuits or something like that, not being ginger. There are a couple. Apparently, standing up helps, because if you're sitting down, it messes with you. But if
you know what really helps me, that is, it sounds weird, but it does, is having a fan blowing on you. I think it tells you that it helps your brain think that you're moving or something, or it helps cool you down. I don't know, but I have to play with the ceiling fan on like full blast, or I'll just immediately die. Well,
that's it as well. Like the way that VR was implemented into Resident Evil 7, like do you know, like there's some other games like Doom VFR where you're stuck and then you kind of warp. I was like, man, that's a really stupid idea. That is an absolutely awful idea. But playing Resident Evil 7 and actually moving,
now you know why they do it.
Now I know why they kind of stagger it when you move, and then like it's not fluid motion because your eyes and your head just explode and can't cope with it.
Jesse, do you get VR sickness?
I yes and no. Like I'm one of those, I have to stand up because I've done a lot of the because out here in Vegas we have some VR like walkthrough experiences. It's really cool. Like they have one that's it's Star Wars. You land on Mustafar, like where Darth Vader's palace is, and you're trying to steal some Imperial plans or something. But they set you up in this like suit and helmet and everything. It's like a mix of VR and augmented reality, because you like walk through like this huge warehouse, and it's got rumble feedback, like you shoot stormtroopers, they give you a gun and everything. And doing something like that is perfectly fine. Like, I don't get sick or anything, but if I just sit down and try to play something in VR, like, I get a little nauseous. So I have to stand up and, kind of move around a little bit to keep from getting sick while playing.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to know that it's not just me. And for anyone else suffering with VR sickness, just know that Samsung and a couple other companies have entire dev teams devoted. That's their only job, is to solve VR motion sickness. So maybe one day we'll get there. But I totally went off topic talking about VR.
That's right.
Going back to Resident Evil 7, yes, it is a fantastic game, although I would like more Resident Evil in it.
Okay.
I mean, it's fair. I get that a lot. I just look at it from the, I've always looked at 7 from the perspective is it's almost like a soft reboot of the series. You start back, at a mansion that just happens to be designed by, or I say mansion, but plantation house or, farmhouse, whatever, but happens to be designed by George Trevor. Umbrella happens to be, in the area. There's a limited amount of enemies, tight hallways. I don't know. To me, it was so reminiscent of the original Resident Evil that I was, that's what, drew my attention to it was, I felt the claustrophobia again, the, enemies that can come out of you're not expecting, and having Jack on top of that, I would have loved to seen like a Jack element in the original Resident Evil. Going back after, having played, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis when it first came out, like looking back at it and Tyrant, thinking that, there was no persistent enemy in the original Resident Evil that I think would have been perfect. And I think that's actually perfectly demonstrated in Resident Evil 7, having a very similar environment type to the original game, that it would have been absolutely great with a persistent threat.
I think the biggest thing that Resident Evil fans need to remember about 7 is that the reason 7 is what it is because people were so unhappy with 6 that Capcom, even this is what I love about Capcom, even though 6 sold incredibly well, it made them a ton of money, they don't consider it a success because they knew how unhappy the fans were. So what 7 was a complete back to basics. Let's make Resident Evil really scary again, because people want slow survival horror. That's what they've been asking for since Resident Evil 4 came out, and we have not been delivering. And that's what 7 ended up being. I think with a couple changes, it could have been a lot more palatable for Resident Evil fans. Like, imagine if it was, I don't know, Sherry in her apartment complex instead of, Ethan in the baker's house. Something like that could have really, just add a character we know. It could have been Billy Cohen for all we know, whatever. But I don't know. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. Like you said, it's going back to the roots of the franchise. Just it kind of went a little off tangent, but I think now maybe with what we're going to talk about, I'm assuming it'll go back to what we want.
Yeah, and obviously, just closing thoughts now about Resident Evil 7. We do forget that Resident Evil 7 did come out at a time where Outlast was really big, Amnesia was really big, kind of scary reaction YouTubers were a real big thing, and I think that helped Resident Evil 7 slightly start to break in, like Resident Evil in general, slightly start to break into the mainstream because of it. You know, scary games and reactions, and yeah, obviously Capcom still needs to have the throne of the best survival horror game ever, so best survival horror franchise ever, should I say? But yeah, overall, I think I was happy with Resident Evil 7. For the longest time, I felt like I was happy with just the original playthrough. Like I've only completed it a few times. For years, I was happy with just, I played it one and done. And now I'm starting to go back and go, right, let me try out Madhouse. Let me try out VR. So I think it's like a wine almost. Like it just needs time to before you start really appreciating it, if I'm honest.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things too. Like I kind of like the idea of them going with new characters. I always like seeing the world of Resident Evil kind of get fleshed out a little bit more. But I think at the same time, I think that's kind of what hindered Resident Evil 7 was the fact that you did have games like Outlast, you had The Evil Within, you had all these games coming out, in a similar vein, with all these new unknown characters, and then Resident Evil, the granddaddy of survival horror, comes in, and they also introduce a game with no real ties to any of their previous games. I think maybe that might have been a little bit more palatable. Like I don't get me wrong, I like the idea of having Ethan and Mia and all these new characters, but maybe have more than just a they could have done more than just a cameo of Chris Redfield, or talking about some other characters like in random notes throughout the environment. Might have sold Resident Evil 7 to like the old school fans a little bit easier. If you could have said, yeah, hey, there's these new characters, but also here's somebody you already know, instead of hashtag not my Redfield at the end of the at the end of the game.
And I think one of the biggest reasons that 7 was so drastically different, not just with the characters, but with kind of the just overall everything, I think they took way too much influence from certain things. The main one being, I don't remember if it was a sequel or a remake, but it was an Evil Dead movie. I did on my channel, it's top 10 secrets and Easter eggs of Resident Evil 7, and I really studied the development and went into everything that went into it, and that's what I discovered. And I saw side-by-side screenshots, and like when you see that movie, I mean, it's Resident Evil 7 all over it. So I think that's one of the things that kind of just caught people off guard, is they're like, whoa, because they had never seen this in the Resident Evil universe before, but because it's not from the Resident Evil universe,
Splashy Splash, obviously, I got that video up for you.
Oh, yeah. No, they had to 3D scan everything, which is how they're doing all the games now. But it causes a lot of problems in development, I've learned, because they when they model something traditionally, it tends to act really weird in the engine. Like, I don't know if people know this, but in Resident Evil 3 Remake, they actually had to make a full-sized Nemesis and scan him into the game.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he wasn't... I think it's going to be number 5. Okay, I showed some clips of the maybe
development process. Well, excuse me, it's a bit further back. Just around here, was it?
Yeah, I know that I edited some clips because I had to really dig around the internet to try to find them. But yeah, like especially that scene where like Mia's coming up the stairs and she jumps at you. I think Mia in general was one of the main things that when you look at the Evil Dead reference that they had, and then look at the game, it's like, whoa. But I think it's even in a house like in Louisiana, and that's
Yeah, no, 100%. Like Mia is straight out of the Evil Dead. Like that whole changing back and forth. I mean, that was like a huge, even in especially in Bruce Campbell's Evil Dead.
Yeah, that's the one.
Doesn't Ethan say groovy at some point as well, or is that Jack Baker?
Somebody does. Yeah,
it's Jack. It's right when you go to when you're in the garage and you get in the car when he jumps. I think it's as he rips the roof off. He says groovy.
That's it. Oh, yeah. It makes perfect sense that they would use that as just a house setting in general was kind of Evil Dead.
Yeah, literally, literal cabin in the woods.
Yeah, no. I mean, if you look at the footage, I'm telling you, I mean, it's no argument that they did not take inspiration from that. Which inspiration's a great thing when you do your own spin on it. It's just it was a very when you're like, it's like when you're eating something that you expect to be sweet and it's like savory and you're like, whoa, it's not bad. It's just you weren't expecting it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually, perfectly kind of ties in the two. Because looking at what we saw from the PS5 reveal of Resident Evil 8, it looks like, maybe the future direction of Capcom games, or at least on the Resident Evil side, are going to draw heavily from others' works. Like there's no denying what we saw in the trailer is very reminiscent of Bram Stoker's work on Dracula. Like it's just, that's why I was so caught off guard when we'd been getting rumors and stuff for months. We were the ones that originally broke the story for Resident Evil 8's name and some of the gameplay mechanics of it, and then having known all of that since back last year. And then seeing the trailer come up, the whole time it was like, oh, this isn't Resident Evil 8. This isn't 8. This isn't 8. And it's like, the word village pops up on the screen, and it's like, oh, this is Resident Evil. It was one of those, because like the whole time, like I actually, I think it's Vampire the Masquerade's. They did a reveal for the Xbox One at their reveal event. Or excuse me, the Xbox Series X, and like the whole time, like especially the part where you see the woman apparently sucking blood out of the arm and stuff. I was like, oh, okay, this is the new Vampire the Masquerade game. Even though like I knew these elements existed with were rumored to exist in the game, like it didn't really strike me until we saw
the werewolf, the snowy setting, the appearance of a village. It just did not click. I was like, this really looks like Resident, and I think we did like a trailer hold like reaction like as we was watching the PS5 reveal, and at one point you went, I don't know what the fuck this is, but I really want to play it.
Yeah, but like I said, just looking at it, I mean, it looks so much like something that could have been a Bram Stoker thing, and I would love to be able to sit down with the devs and ask them how much his work actually influenced the making of this game, because it's so uncanny. Like you said with the the Evil Dead and Resident Evil 7, like the similarities from what we've seen so far are just they're too coincidental. Like it just looks like it was heavily inspired.
Right.
Yeah. And go on. Sorry, as you work high.
No, I was just going to say that this trailer, I can't wait for more information to come out, because this was just a little peek, like a teaser, but we don't know what we're in for yet.
Indeed. And obviously we've smoothly segued on to Resident Evil 8. Obviously as Resident Evil content creators, it doesn't really get much better than this. Resident Evil is back trending as it should be. What an absolutely amazing thing that Resident Evil 8 was announced very shortly after Resident Evil 3. After the launch of Resident Evil 3 Remake, I should say. So that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, I'm really glad to not be a Silent Hill creator. Listen, I have so much love and sympathy because I love Silent Hill. I mean, not as much as Resident Evil, but imagine if Capcom did to Resident Evil what Konami has done to Silent Hill. Imagine how heartbroken you would feel and how hurt. And that's one of the things that I talked about in my analysis for it is I think that this is Capcom's opportunity to usher in the Silent Hill fans and say, listen, they're not treating you right, but we'll treat you right. Come play our game. Wow. And they're trying their best, which is why, we kind of have the aesthetics once again, like 7, because Resident Evil 7 felt more like a Silent Hill game than it did a Resident Evil game, at least for me. But
Yeah, because in a lot of ways, like they kind of kind of harken back to like Resident Evil 3.5 in a way where instead of going like just a straight paranormal route, they kind of gave the new E virus like the appearance of having a paranormal element to it. Like the whole thing with what's her name, the little girl, Evelyn.
Yeah.
Like they made that almost look like a psychological element to the game. And then at the end of the day, you find out like, oh, it's just because she's the virus and she can do this. So no, I totally get that, and I think from what we've seen with maybe that direction, what we've heard from rumors going forward, that hallucinogens and stuff are going to be a big part of Village. Whether that's true or not, it does seem like they kind of are going in a more Silent Hill feel per se, rather than like obviously I don't think they're going to bring paranormal or witchcraft or magic or anything into Resident Evil, but I think we're going to get that feel, and then at the end of the game again just get kind of, oh yeah, it wasn't anything crazy, it was just again a virus doing all of it.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys know the connections between Resistance and Resident Evil 8, which they kind of snuck in there, but Daniel Fabron, one of the masterminds, along with Alex Wesker, are going to be working together. And I think it's really interesting because this is them in the future, experienced and older, and who knows how much more evil they'll be. But I thought that was kind of, because when Daniel was in Resistance, I was just like, who is this guy? I literally, when I heard his voice, I was like, I thought it was someone like playing the game and doing like YouTube commentary. I didn't know it was the actual like voice actor. And I was like, whoa. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, we've gotten the the rumors and stuff about obviously like if the guy in the trailer turns out to be anybody but Daniel, like Capcom definitely just wanted to fuck with all of us, by giving him the rounded glasses and really he even his hairstyle and everything. The guy in the trailer with the hat has rounded glasses, actually the same length hair that Daniel has, only it's not slicked back.
Yeah, because that picture right there looks like they photoshopped the older one to look younger. At least that's what I see. But I do think that's the case.
Yeah, and I've heard rumor. And of course, this all goes back to until Capcom says otherwise. It is just rumor that there was a younger Spencer apparently cast. I don't know what, or at least mocap. I don't know what that implies for Resident Evil 8. But like you said, if you're saying that you feel that Daniel's picture looks like it was photoshopped to be younger, that kind of actually makes sense for Spencer to have been somebody. We got a young Spencer coming up in an upcoming project. We need old Spencer as a mastermind, and really it kind of makes the mastermind roster make a whole lot of sense. If Alex Wesker is indeed going to be one of the main villains of this game, like we've been hearing, if Daniel is indeed this guy in the trailer, and if there is indeed going to be either flashbacks with a young Oswald Spencer, he somehow has something to do with this game. It all makes sense, because I always thought the original mastermind roster was just kind of all up in Nikolai makes sense as a mastermind, but nobody else does. Like there's so many. I feel like there's so many more relevant newer people that they could have went with as masterminds, and instead they're like, oh yeah, here's Daniel, Spencer, and Alex kind of makes sense, because Revelations 2 isn't that old. It's 4 or 5 years old, so it's kind of relevant, but bringing Spencer, who we haven't seen in a literal decade, since Resident Evil 5, like just an odd choice, when they could have went, and then of course, Annette Birkin made sense, but the rest of them, none of the rest of them made sense. So, that's why I give credence to the fact that these are probably the characters we're going to see in 8, just because, like you said, it kind of explains their point, them being in Resistance.
Well, I didn't know about the young Spencer. That's interesting. One thing I will tell you is it's very unlikely he will be a clone of any kind, because I learned that Capcom refuses to have anything related to clones in the Resident Evil games because of the movies. They almost did, which is why we got that weird Ada clone thing happening in 6, but she wasn't a clone because they never officially said it. Like, yeah, it was a lot of weirdness happened with that. But
yeah, that was the weird thing about like the whole Ada deal. Because you're like, okay, this is clearly a clone, and you could tell, like, I would probably say at least until like halfway through RE6's development, like Carla was definitely a clone, and then like last minute they're like, oh well, we probably can't make this a clone. What's another way we can explain this away? And we'll use the viral mutation to explain it, and it just never made sense in that context. Like I always felt like that explanation of that was actually Carla. She just crystallized for a couple of months, and then boom, she's Ada Wong.
Yeah,
like that just always seemed like even for Resident Evil, it was weird. Like it always felt out of place. So
I can't confirm because I don't have official sources, but from what I investigated on the internet, that's what happened. Because Resident Evil 6 and whichever Resident Evil movie at the time were being developed side by side, and then they both caught wind of each other. But the game was easier to change than the movie, so they changed the game. But that's all I know about that. But anyway, getting back to whatever we were talking about with Resident Evil 8.
Oh yeah, just that little game that might be coming out, Resident Evil 8. You might have heard of it.
Well, and the other thing about Alex Wesker, I don't know how many people played Revelations 2, but I don't know if this is like too much spoilers, but if you haven't played it by now, it's your fault. She ends up like merging with Natalia, so Natalia is both good and evil because she's still herself, but then she has like Alex Wesker as like part of her. It's sort of like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with that. As if I'm remembering correctly, I'm pretty sure that's what happened at the end of Revelations 2. I only played it like 4 times.
Yeah, it's essentially like, and they kind of like rehashed that a little bit again with Mia and Evelyn in RE7, where Mia's sometimes in control, but I think it's the same way with Alex. Alex has ultimate control, but kind of gives Natalia autonomy from time to time, kind of like Evelyn did with Mia to an extent in 7. So that'll be actually really interesting to see because Revelations 2, I think, like I can't remember like what time it's supposed to take place, but it's been at least 10 years or so, I think, in the passing of Resident Evil, because I don't think Resident Evil 8 is set modern, like literal modern day. I think it's a couple of years into the future. So it'd be interesting to see if indeed Alex and Natalia are in this game, how living with this kind of dual personality, and like obviously Alex is going to try to get some kind of control and power back as a evil person. So it'll be interesting to see how that character has developed in this kind of in the shadows over the past couple of years.
And I don't know what you guys think about this. I've heard fans talking about this, and it's a plausible theory, but they're saying with the setting and everything that it could not only be related to the fact that Resident Evil 4 Remake is a thing, but also that it might be geographically close to where Resident Evil 4 took place with the whole sort of village thing, because it looks very Eastern European, but I think that's something you take with a grain of salt. But what do you think?
Oh, I'm under the impression of like, now that everything that we thought was true about 8 so far has been confirmed, I think that it kind of soft confirms the fact that Resident Evil 4 exists, or a remake of Resident Evil 4 is either already exists in some kind of development or is definitely coming in development. If we've learned anything from 7 and 2 and 3's remakes, is Capcom does not let assets go to waste. So I'm hoping my favorite character of the past several games, the Bolt Cutters, comes back for this game. It's my favorite character in the series so far. He's actually been in, the Bolt Cutters almost has like, its own like IMDb credit for appearing in video games now. Because it's the same model every time. But no, I think, seeing how similar this environment is going to look to what we would expect to see from Resident Evil 4 and next gen consoles, I think I just don't see Capcom letting any of this go to waste. Like, I really feel that Village is giving us kind of a sneak peek of what's to come with Resident Evil 4 remake. I mean, between the inventory screen we've already seen, the fact that we know currency is back involved again. There's a couple little things that we received the other day that I'm not I'm not going to talk about. We've got a thing we're publishing next week on it. But I think when that comes out, a couple more pieces of the trailer will make a little bit more sense. But we've seen so much of a 4 inspiration in 8 that I think it's, again, to kind of bring fans back, that it really enjoyed 4. Obviously, 4 has been one of Capcom's most successful Resident Evil titles and is ported from everything from, the Nintendo GameCube to the Samsung Smart Fridge.
Basically, you got the Street Fighter 2 treatment.
It certainly has.
So I really think that we're looking at a sneak peek of 4. Just from the amount of assets that I think can be can cross over, and that actually makes me really excited because I do like the vibe of 4 that I'm seeing from 8 so far. Even if, like I said, I'm assuming they're going to be totally different games as far as gameplay goes, but I kind of really want to see that. Or feel that kind of 4 vibe again, because I don't think we've had that in quite some time.
And we already know, and we did an article a little while ago on this, but we already know that they are trying to. Well, they tried to link the Nemesis NEA virus parasite to the Las Plagas parasite.
Oh yeah, with the zombies with the tentacles.
Yeah, so obviously they're not exactly the same, but I mean, it does feel like they're trying to bring it full circle almost. And maybe we'll see them returning in Resident Evil 4 Remake, if that does exist, of course.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of like when I first saw the new tentacle zombies in Resident Evil 3 Remake. That was like the first thing I thought of was the Ganados, or the Mangini from 4 and 5, because I mean that was literally their whole aesthetic was shoot their head off, and all of a sudden they got the little tentacle thing coming out of their head. It would have been nice to see maybe a little bit more variety, but I guess now we can kind of look at the tentacle zombies in the 3 remake as almost beta versions of the Ganados that we saw in the original 4, and possibly can see if there is in fact a Resident Evil 4 remake.
Yeah, we'll just have to, I guess, wait and see, because sometimes, I don't know, for the most part, rumors tend to turn out to be extremely true. Like, I mean, everything they said about Resident Evil 8, I mean, there was a big part of me that was like, I don't know if that's true, because that sounds a little ridiculous. But here we are with werewolves.
Yeah. Well, trust me, when because I wrote the original piece on that. That was the whole thing about werewolves coming into Resident Evil 3 was a exclusive of ours. And I remember writing that article because I'd heard those rumors back in September of last year. And I kind of sat on it for a couple of months and kind of molded over with the team. And I was like, guys, this is a little out there. I don't know. I'm hearing werewolves and witches, and I just don't know. And I chopped it around to a couple of, insiders and stuff. And literally, everybody was like, yeah, dude, like that's so far off base. Like it's not real. It's not real. And I struggled. And I remember the night I actually wrote down the article, I was on to Andy, and I was like, man, if we're wrong on this, like we were wrong. we were dead wrong.
Yeah. But big people, didn't you? In big Resident Evil YouTubers tweeting about it, going like when we initially did publish it, going, do you know what? This is obvious. This is obviously not going to be Resident Evil 8, and I'm not going to play it. This is going to be absolute, like, if it's this, it's going to be absolutely terrible. And all of a sudden, the trailer comes out, and everybody loves it. Very, very fascinating, that.
But it was funny because like I remember in talking with JJ over at Row too, both of us, we kind of just didn't even want to go into the comment section because it was like literally everybody, oh, this is fake, there's no way this is real, you guys are just making stuff up. And I'm like, I get it, like it sounds made up, but honestly, that's kind of at the end of the day what sold me on the rumor was the fact that it sounded too fake to be fake, if that makes sense. Like, it was one of those things like, if you're talking about a Resident Evil game, why are you going to talk about? I mean, I get like there's some werewolves and some of the off lore and stuff, but you're talking about Resident Evil, like you're not going to talk about witches, you're not going to talk about werewolves. Like the environment kind of made sense a little bit as a Resident Evil game. They obviously have played 4, but at the end of the day, it never made sense. Like it would have been different if somebody would have came to us and said, "Hey, I got a scoop on Resident Evil 8. The band's getting back together. It's going to be Jill, Barry, Chris. Coming back to fight on new like a Wesker clone or something." If somebody would have said that, I'm like, all right, you're this is garbage. You're full of shit. Like this isn't happening. So it was the fact that the rumors were so off kilter for a Resident Evil title is why I ultimately was like, we got to say something about this, and then we did, and we took a lot of backlash for it for a while. But I will say, like, seeing the word village pop up at the PS5 reveal trailer was just a moment of pure satisfaction, because obviously
vindicated.
Hype. I think I sent that message to Andy like on Facebook Messenger. I was like, vindication.
That was it.
Oh God. But I know what you mean, because I would believe werewolves versus someone's like, oh, the new character is going to be Steve Burnside. I'm like, okay, sure.
No, from me, dog.
So
talking, just breaking down Resident Evil 8 into its elements again. Kai, what is going on with this? What do you think is happening with these 4 characters here?
I've been trying to figure it out, and I truly can't tell. I know that people have said witches. I don't know if that's official, but to me, this reads as more vampire-y, especially with the blood sucking. I think it might come down to I'm pretty sure someone in the series at some point was using a virus to stay like young and alive. But I think it's sort of that trope where, like, I guess sucking the blood from wherever keeps them young and beautiful, and at some point in the game they're going to turn into old, scary, like look at her lips, like you can see like wrinkles. It's weird. I don't know. I really can't put my finger on what is going on. I need more information.
Yeah, I the only reason, like, because we kind of coined the phrase witch when we wrote the original article on all of this, which we've kind of cleaned up the language a lot since then. Getting more details. Like in my original article we wrote when we announced I said literal werewolves, and I think now, like, from what we've gathered and what like us and Rely on Horror have also had some sources come forward, these aren't like actual like werewolves. There's some kind of I think the official term that we heard from the test demos was beast men. It's clearly a werewolf, but Capcom wants to say beast men. But I think, like, with the witches, that was a term that I kind of coined off the top of my head. Just given the description, like I don't think Capcom is even going to remotely introduce these characters as witches. But when we got the initial leak that we reported on, it said, it's this kind of female figure that can go shadowy and kind of do like Marguerite and like dissipate into bugs. The only thing I could think of at the time to call it was a witch.
So you did have this, didn't you? This
So
Green Mile-esque thing going on.
Yeah, that screams Marguerite. Whatever Marguerite had, this woman's got the same infestation.
So like I said, like, witch was a kind of a term that I coined, for my original article on this. So, like I said, I thought that the actual calling it witch was maybe a little bit misleading, but it was the only word that I had for it. But then seeing the trailer, at least seeing the fact that, some female is going to turn into a swarm of bugs, at least shows me that, okay, like maybe I was wrong calling it a witch in my article, but at least the mechanic exists. And then seeing the 4 of these characters together is almost like a witch's coven, head witch, which looks different than the rest and kind of so followers. So, the witch element, might be wrong, but I think we kind of at least somewhat nailed the narrative that is kind of portrayed by.
I mean, they could be witch vampires for all we know. The thing that I will credit Capcom with is this is simultaneously like something that but it's also new and fresh, because I mean, we can't put a finger on what they are, and they look like something we have, like the werewolf. We've seen werewolves. That's nothing new. But this group of women, they're very intimidating, and like there's something going on there. I was gonna say something, and I totally just had a brain fart. Oh, it's probably because I've been playing Oblivion again lately. But I'm reading like Dark Brotherhood vibes from this, but like all women. For those who don't know, Dark Brotherhood's like an assassin group in the Elder Scrolls game, and that they dress in like the black hoods and they murder people. So that's what I'm seeing, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I want to know more.
It's funny. I had heard rumor that there was going to be more than one of the these quote unquote witches in the game, but we could never get anything solid on it, so I never actually published the article on it. But I think what would be kind of cool to use, like I from what we've heard from the test demos and stuff, from like I said, information that was passed on to us and rely on horror that we've reported on, there's definitely a boss fight with one of these witches. I don't know if it's the main one or one of these other 3 characters we see in the black robes, but I think what would be interesting is which we haven't seen in a while in a Resident Evil game, is to have a setup like this where maybe all 3 of these are going to be sub bosses throughout the game until you get to the head witch, kind of almost like the left and right hand in Resident Evil 4, where maybe one of them can turn into a swarm of bugs, maybe another one of them is the one that can dissipate, or each of them have their own little mechanic that makes their boss fight unique throughout the game, because I highly doubt we're going to see these 4 characters and maybe only fight one of them, or possibly 2. I think they're all 4 going to be some kind of sub boss or little plot, and I think it would be cool to see them kind of like split up, like maybe some powers or whatever they can do.
Well, regarding the actual characters themselves, I mean, this one on the left, looking like a bit of a Claire Redfield model going on here. I don't know, and that is obviously a super conspiracy theory, but I'm getting Claire Redfield vibes. I don't know about you guys.
Well, I think it was Dusk Golem on Twitter had put out a statement, maybe like last week or week before, that some of the images we see in the trailer especially regarding characters, and I think he's referring to these kind of like hidden faces a little bit, might actually be placeholder characters. Like obviously they exist in the game, but the face models for these might actually not be final, which would kind of give into the give credence to that actually might be Claire's face, but it's so shrouded and hidden. Capcom's like, okay, well, we're not dead set on this yet. Let's just throw something in there so we can get this trailer out. So it's entirely possible that might actually be Claire Redfield's facial capture, but the character itself in the actual game might not look anything like that.
Just reusing assets.
That's actually one of the big things that was going on. I'm sure you've heard about The Last of Us 2 and all the stuff with that, but people were showing the original E3 trailers from when it was first announced to now, and not only were things different, but like some characters were in places that they're not in the main game due to reasons I will not talk about. So I don't know. I think a lot of it is kind of take it with a grain of salt, because things definitely change.
Oh yeah, so, just like we know, or I mean, I say we know, we've seen the reports and stuff from information we and other sources have gathered that the beta tests for Resident Evil Village were all done on current gen hardware. I know the March play test from several of the people who came forward from that, right after and within the past couple of weeks, all said, hey, we played this on a PS4 Pro. But yet when the trailer came out, they're saying next gen only. What's going on? We've had an inbox flooded with that, people asking like, well, crap, I was so excited because, we'd heard, I heard development was being done on current gen, and here's the announcement trailer and, only next gen support. Because actually one of the emails we received was from a supposed tester. And that was his whole thing. He's like, hey, I tested the game out. I got invited for one of the beta tests back a couple of months ago, played it on PS4, loved it, was really excited for it, then saw the trailer, and now I'm going to have to sell a kidney to buy a PS5, so I can play the game. So, it's kind of I think a lot of the stuff we see with Village, I think a lot of it is probably actually work in progress. Like we're probably seeing a mixture of current gen capability mixed in with next gen a little bit. Cause I mean, there's some elements of, I think even of the trailer itself where I just don't think it looks next gen, comparing it to, I know the RE engine, obviously have a different aesthetic than other game engines, but I don't know, looking at some of the footage we've seen in the trailer, like some of it looks like, current gen, capability. And then some of it, especially I think that mansion shot and some of the screenshots from the developers previews definitely look next gen. But then there's just some parts of it was like, well, yeah, I don't think I could have done any better on a PS4 or, it wouldn't look any different.
And touching on that, I just did a video on Revelations and Resident Evil Revelations, which was on the 3DS originally. In the original E3 reveal, there was this whole sequence where Jill and Chris are pointing guns at each other and they're like, you're going to have to kill me if you want it. And then there's like a second Chris that's like a doppelganger. And you're like, and he has an Australian accent, and none of that was in the game.
Oh my God, I'm so happy you said that. I'm so happy you said that. We were talking about this literally last week about cutting content, and I swear, and I might be having mad Mandela effect here. I know this is a digression, but quite important. But I swear that one of the characters, the guy in the chair, when they point the guns at each other, the guy in the chair was meant to be Hunk. I swear.
Hunk was in the trailer too. And he wasn't in the game, so
yeah. Like I remember, when and I swear I wish I'd have kept like all the magazines and stuff. I had like game magazines and stuff when I was a kid, because I swear, like me and Andy have had multiple conversations about this. About I remember reading either in Game Informer or some video game magazine that was like there's a new twist and like Hunk is Chris Redfield's doppelganger. Like I legitimately remember this being a thing at one time. And then, Revelations comes out and it's like, oh, Chris is here, Jill's here. There's literally no meetup until the end, and it has nothing to do with what we saw in the original trailer.
All right, so Hunk is Australian, confirmed.
Hunk is an Aussie.
Because for the longest time, until more videos and stuff started coming on YouTube, I swore I made the trailer up. Like I thought for the longest time that the trailer actually never happened. That was just some kind of weird memory thing that I had until like one day I was specific. I think I was talking with Andy about it. I went to specifically look it up, and I was like, okay, no, I'm not crazy. This trailer had this element in it that was never explained ever again.
Yeah, and the whole reason I brought that up is because with the whole Chris shooting Mia or whoever he shot, and then like just all of the stuff that was going on in the trailer, none of that might end up being in the game. We don't know, because this is what happens with teaser trailers.
I'm still banking on this is a massive swerve, and that this is all a hallucination. Just the way, I mean, speaking from an imagery point of view, it looks very, very blurred. Ethan's almost got tunnel vision with what's in front of him. And just the lighting in general, I'm getting big. This is maybe a hallucination vibe.
Well, we had originally
That's actually a good point. Sorry. I didn't think of that.
I can see it from that perspective, but I think some of the original leaks that came out also said that this was going to be a flashback sequence, which could also explain kind of the blurry, kind of dreamy feel of the whole thing. Is the fact that it, because typically that's kind of how flashbacks are portrayed in games. Like look at even kind of the shift in lighting and tone in Resident Evil 5 when Chris is flashing back to him and Jill taking on Wesker at the Spencer estate. It looks like the game, but it still feels different than the rest of it. Like there's some element of the way that they designed those scenes to make it, where you can't just like randomly start watching and be like, oh, this is just part of the game normally. Like it has the feel of a flashback. And which is what I kind of gathered from this, but I'm still banking on there being either Chris is hallucinating and the reason why he's doing what he's doing is because he's hallucinating, or it is entirely possible that maybe Ethan's hallucinating the whole thing. But I'm glad whoever's hallucinating finally got kind of brought back old Chris in their hallucinations at least.
But we do know from the leaks, the batch of leaks that we got recently involving the beast men, involving Chris Redfield being a quote unquote bad guy. We do know that hallucinations are going to be playing a big part with the new virus or parasite, whether it's going to be in Resident Evil 8.
But see, that's great because the game is going to really mess with you. And when games mess with you, it's terrifying because you legitimately don't know what to expect. And then to the point, you don't know what's real.
Indeed, I hope they go like full eternal darkness and they just start switching your TV off and saying you got corrupt save and all that sort of thing.
Go for it. Just throw everything you got at us.
So what about this character on the floor? I mean, a lot of people are saying it's Mia. But what do you think's going on in this scene right here?
I had no idea what to think, but once you mentioned hallucinations or flashbacks, I was like, However, with the flashback thing, they seem to show Mia reading a story in like a modern house somewhere, and I don't know. That looked more like a flashback because they usually use sepia tones with flashbacks, but I have no idea.
Well, I mean, I kind of get the same vibe that this is all the same. So the structure that I've come to understood from the beta test, because apparently, I can't remember. I was reading this on somebody's thread when they were speaking about the beta test, but the beta test opens the same way kind of the trailer does. Only there's supposed to be some kind of like almost like Disney kind of animation while, at least obviously this is still the beta, might not make the final game, but according to some of the beta testers, there was this almost like Disney animated scene as Mia's telling that folklore, or Disney might be wrong, but some kind of like artful, cartoony, scene while Mia's explaining the story. Ethan walks up, and then from what I understand, like the Chris part happens next in the trailer, which from what we heard from different beta testers back several months ago was, and some of the tests, Chris shoots Mia. We heard Chris shoots Ethan and other tests. And then there's, like I said, there's the shooting, the home invasion shooting scene. And then, Ethan wakes up in the village.
That think sounds very on par with most game design, but continue.
Yeah. So, I'm pretty sure like this, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's Mia. Like I said, like that we were specific, like the people who leaked the beta test specifically said it was either going to be me or Ethan in the final thing. So I don't think, like, I can't think of anybody else that Capcom could just randomly throw in for, Chris's shot, lighting up like this. Like, unless they want to go super plot twist and that's actually Jill on the floor.
Yeah, but that, oh God, the fans would be very happy about that.
Yeah,
but what you're saying lines up, and I think you're right, because typically what games do, good games anyway, they give you a tutorial section without you knowing it's a tutorial section. So it sounds like they're going to start the game in Ethan and Mia's house and everything's happy, giving you a chance to get used to the controls, walk around, interact with stuff. And then once you activate the right story points, then it goes into the Chris shooting her. And then you're like, oh my God. And then flash forward, giving the player that what the hell is going on thing to get them invested in the story. But I could be wrong, but that sounds accurate.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, it sounds like from, and obviously there was a multitude, like we know for a fact that Capcom's at least done 2 beta runs of this. They did one, I think, back in September, August, maybe August, is when that one email went out that Capcom was looking for testers for a new upcoming game that everybody kind of assumed was RE3 remake and ended up not being. So like, because I always was under the impression when they first announced that they were looking for testers, everybody took it as RE3 confirmed. But then, I got to thinking about it a couple of months after, the test came out and then RE3 got announced. I went back and was reading through the emails from the ambassador program on it. And it was like, oh yeah, this is the game that's early in development, like not slated to release anytime soon. We'd like to get some testing feedback on. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, wait a minute, they never could have been talking about Resident Evil 3. Because, we know as of like October, Resident Evil 3 was like 90% complete. according to, the developers and stuff. So it was definitely not an early in development game. And, I think I wrote an article on it going like, yeah, what everybody took as confirmation for RE3 was actually confirmation for 8. And, then, we heard the rumors come out of that playtest that definitely was not Resident Evil 3. It was, the werewolves, the village and everything. And then I think back in, and I think back in March was the second round of testing. It was either March or April. I think it was either end of February, beginning of March, or end of March, beginning of April was the second round of testing, which is where the name got announced after that round of testing. The inventory system, which we'd reported on, some people got to play a version of it with Resident Evil 7 style inventory. Some people reported from the testing that they got to play in RE4 style inventory. So, you can definitely tell, in the second round of testing, Capcom kind of went out of their way to give people different versions of the game, so they could kind of maybe tell who was telling on them.
Right.
Because I don't think anybody lied out of that testing. Because like I said, even in our article, we had two different people come forward, and one person said, "Yeah, I played Chris Shoots Ethan, and it's got Resident Evil 7 inventory, and I played a standoff in a house." And then we've got somebody else that says, "Oh, well, I played in Chris Shoots Mia, and it had Resident Evil 4 style inventory." And so at the time it was weird because you had two different people that played the same demo with very drastic experiences. And it's okay, well, we'll report on both, and maybe Capcom's, trying to kind of weed out who's doing what. And then we see, the trailer come out, and they're okay, yeah, Capcom was definitely telling people, or, giving them two different versions of the game to see who was leaking information, because everything both people told us, we ended up seeing elements of both.
And you just made me realize, because there's a big part of me that I tried so hard to get into that testing. I sent emails and nothing back. And I was like, but I'm a Resident Evil YouTuber. And I just realized that's probably why they wouldn't choose us, because it's we're not going to tell you what we're working on. Go away.
Yeah, no, it's funny because, we had, we had the Biohazard Declassified signed up in the ambassador program. And I noticed this, once we hit gold on the program, they stopped giving us points. And because now they've rolled out a point history feature that shows because you do the hashtag REBHFun, and you get a point, up to 5 points a day. But I noticed once we hit a certain point, they stopped granting us points altogether. And I have a feeling it's because somebody on the ambassador program started actually paying attention, because they have since they started an actual Twitter account for the ambassador program. I've noticed that Twitter platform has been really active. So I have a feeling somebody was on the official, Twitter account, scrolling through, and then, click on, oh, hey, here's this Biohazard Declassified. What are they? And click on it. And oh, these are the assholes that told on 8. They got 70,000 people. They definitely do not need to be in this program. Stop giving them points. Yeah. I don't know.
Really bizarre. It is really bizarre that they don't ever really involve the Resident Evil creator community, Residents of Evil, like yourself, Kai, Sphere Hunter, etc. It's up to us really to kind of.
But think about how hard that would be. Which would you prefer? An unofficial source that tells you everything, or they actually let you play, but they make you sign an NDA that says you can't talk about it at all, and then you're like,
oh, no, actually,
yeah. I mean that's kind of always been my go at it. It's I would rather be wrong on what might be a rumor, and go ahead and get to know about it and get to at least talk about it, in the public sphere, than actually seeing what's going to happen and not be able to say anything at all. Because I have a big fucking mouth,
yeah.
I
so
had
hard.
I heard a lot of things about Res 3 from some of my contacts in the the reporting community and stuff that I didn't even talk to the team about, because I was because I think with Andy I had mentioned something to him about Brad dying in a new way, and I was I know it and I want to talk about it, but at the same time I don't want to talk about it, one of those whole things.
Yeah, that's actually a good point that we're talking about quote unquote influencers within the Resident Evil community. From yourself, obviously, we've only really been about for a year, but from yourself, Kai, have you ever had an interaction with Capcom, knowing that you're a Resident Evil complete turnkey Resident Evil page? Have you ever had anything from Capcom?
I have not. However, I have two goals with my channel: to hit 100,000 subscribers and to work directly with Capcom. And my management apparently has people that can get in touch with Capcom, so they're gonna see. But I don't really know how that. I don't think Capcom really works with influencers at all. Because like Residents of Evil, I don't think they've ever had anything official. I haven't. Sphere Hunter hasn't. Scorpion, all the other Resident Evil YouTubers, I've never seen anything like that. So I don't know if that's even on the table. You know, I think maybe the most is they'll send you a review copy to play a game, but even then,
because well, that's the thing too. Because I know, what's his name, Bach on Twitch. You know, he got a copy of Resident Evil 3 early. Because he was streaming like the day before it, but I don't know if that was the partnership he has with Capcom, or I know some people got review copies from Green Man. Green Man Games gave some people review copies. So you know, I don't.
That was a really sorry to cut you off there, Jesse, but that was a really bizarre time because, you know, obviously being dedicated Resident Evil page, we wanted to kind of hit the ground running as quick as we could with Resident Evil 3, but there was a complete embargo. It seemed like there was a complete streaming embargo up until the release date, but then we went on the day before and everyone was streaming Resident Evil 3 remake, and like it was just really bizarre.
Well, one thing I'll tell you, I worked at GameStop, and like those games are sitting in the back about a week before they're supposed to like exist, you know. And employees are allowed to take them home. It's sort of a don't ask, don't tell policy. Like, we didn't see anything, do whatever. And you can take it home and play it, but you can't tell anybody that you did that. So, I mean, it's as easy as just knowing someone at GameStop and bribing them, or if they're just your buddy and they're doing you a favor. Not just GameStop, I'm sure any game store, because, you know, you have to have the product before the release date, obviously.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened, you know, because when the first big gameplay leaks came out, it was from France, you know, right before their lockdown started. From, you know, what we gathered, you know, obviously not, you know, living in France, we don't know what really happened, but from what we gathered from Twitch streams and, you know, from YouTube and other news sources, you know, Game Store was about to, the lockdown was taking place in France. You know, they're saying, hey, nobody's going out, no, all non-essential businesses are closing, and somebody that owned a game store was like, oh, well, fuck this. Here, we got all these people want Resident Evil 3. Come get it before you have to lock yourself inside. So, you know, we know a lot of that happened, but it was just a funny thing to see, like, you know, all these streams get taken down for, you know, streaming Resident Evil 3 too early, and then just out of nowhere, like, you know, some of the big, you know, Twitch influencers and stuff started doing the same thing, and it was like, oh, well, I thought this, you know, because I actually reached out. Well, because I actually reached out to one of the community managers about it, and I was like, hey, you know, from what I understand, there's an embargo right now, but this is going on. And they're like, oh, yeah, well, you know, some influencers, you know, get, you know, special permissions and stuff. And I was like, well, that's kind of, you know, it's like, oh, okay.
I think it comes down to the date they're allowed to do it. I think there was people who didn't follow that because they unofficially got it early. And then there's the people who got it early, but they're like, you can't play it until this time on this date,
I mean,
you know?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like with the Final Fantasy thing, you know, where a lot of...
that was really bad.
Well, I think Final Fantasy actually got hit really bad. Like, a lot of people were pissed at Square over that because a lot, from what I gathered from talking to people in the community, was the big influencers started reporting smaller streamers, especially like the Australian community that got the game way in advance. It was actually
days, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah.
Crazy.
So like it was never really explicitly put out that they couldn't start streaming it early. And then a lot of the bigger Twitch influencers, from what I understand, got pissed because these small channels, you know, were starting to grow because everybody wanted to watch Final Fantasy playthroughs. And since they had, you know, signed contracts with Square or whatever, like they were legally contractually obligated to not play it. And then they see, you know, this nobody on Twitch all of a sudden has, you know, 1,000 people watching him, you know, because I, you know, like I said, it's all rumor, but I heard from multiple people that they saw big Twitch names pop up in their channels, you know, like it's like noticeable names, I guess, within the streaming community. And then literally within an hour get like an email from Twitch saying, hey, you can't stream this. And it was, it's one of those things like, maybe Twitch's algorithm picked it up, but it's also suspicious that, somebody who can't play that's being an ass about it also like was just in your stream. So
yeah, that's really uncool, because if you've already got an audience, which is so hard to do, let someone else, take that chance, because it's really hard to be a creator, and it's probably the most difficult thing is, just getting your first 1,000 subscribers or followers or whatever it's a very daunting task. It took me like a year and a half to get 1,000, which is crazy.
Yeah, and obviously talking of channels that are looking to grow, what's your next steps?
I don't know. I want to do so many things, as long as it's just revolving around Resident Evil in a positive way. I think there's I always thought that there was a lot of toxic fans in the Resident Evil community, and more I'm learning that that's not necessarily, they are, but for the most part, people have been really cool and really nice, and I'm hoping to see more of that. It's like I saw a really funny meme that I love, where they showed Doom, and it was like Doom the game, and it's like shooting and gore and explosions, and then it's like Doom the fan base, and they're all like cute and happy, and
yeah, like that whole like wholesome crossover between Doom and Animal Crossing that was kind of like.
Well, listen, I have so many ideas that it's just hard for one person to do. I want to do a whole Resident Evil themed cookbook. I want to do like cosplay tutorials and like just so many things. I'm actually planning, actually, I can't tell you about it, but it's ASMR related. Okay. It's been requested for a very, very long time, and it's going to require an entire like shooting and green screen and special effects and stuff. But I don't know. I'm going to keep doing secrets and Easter eggs videos, because that's what people, I think, primarily come to my channel for. And it's really fun to learn about all these games that you love, because I like to dive deeper than just, there a lot of people get mad because a lot of times there's not even Easter eggs in those videos, but like, I love learning about the development and how games came to be. Speaking of which, do you guys know anything about Resident Evil Portable? Anything.
Oh my God, we was talking about this last week. You've been bugging our chats. You've been bugging our chats.
I haven't. It's just parallel thinking, I swear.
Yeah. Hang on, let me splice that in, because this is a very interesting topic which just disappeared off the face of the earth, just like that Resident Evil Revelations.
Oh my God, if you have something.
I don't, unfortunately. No, but I'd love to talk about it with you.
Yeah, no, we'd love to theorize with you, but that's been one of the things that have always eluded us. And it's so funny too, because I've heard so many, I've met like a lot of older people in the community that have like a lot of connections, and there's been a lot of things about development of older games that have came out, but this is still a mystery to like everybody.
There's the holy grail of Resident Evil content.
Maybe finding the actual original 80% build of 1.5. Like this is like the next biggest thing.
I have stared at this so long trying to find anything. I have Googled to the ends of the earth. The only thing I haven't done is like gone to Capcom Osaka and like knocked on the door and be like, hey, could you tell me what this was going to be so I can sleep at night?
Well, when was this? 2009. So this would have been.
Just, they don't announce games if they don't have anything. Like that's just weird. And I know that games are announced and sometimes canceled, but there's always like screenshots or concept art or something. And this game just has nothing. And a lot of people have said that it was just like the prototype for Revelations, but I found a lot of contradicting information to that. So I don't know who to believe or what to believe.
Well, the screenshot, it's nothing to do with Revelations.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the screenshot to me screams like Resident Evil like 2 and 3. Like this to me feels like Raccoon City streets, especially looking at some of the older like screenshots and promo arts for Resident Evil 3 specifically. Like this feels like some kind of Resident Evil like Raccoon City experience of some sort.
Definitely.
That's what I've always gathered from it, and especially they kind of went back to like the old font scheme, but it's kind of like reminiscent of Operation Raccoon City's font scheme a little bit. Like I don't know, it's just weird that they only made like a box art for it and nothing else. I just refuse to believe it's that simple.
Well, and then on top of that, when the guy's talking, he literally doesn't say anything. He's just like Resident Evil Portable.
Yeah, hang on.
Thank you. It's like you could have said something like, it makes me so crazy because I love the PSP. I have one that I bought that I've been playing like crazy, and I was even able to find the unreleased Oblivion game.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like we've been able to find the canceled Game Boy ports. We've been able to find the canceled all the Game Boy Advance port of Resident Evil 2. Like all of these unreleased ports like eventually wash up somewhere, and literally nothing for this one.
It's really bizarre.
Like it makes sense. Like I don't know if you saw the article or not, where they were talking about some of the unreleased Capcom Vancouver games that got canceled, like the Dino Crisis remake that was pitched. And then there was the Resident Evil X, that they called Rex for short, that was canceled. Like it makes sense for those games to have like literally nothing there, because they were literally people brainstorming in a room and coming up with plots and stuff like that. Maybe there was some light concept art done, but they never made any kind of development progress. But just watching this reveal for the PSP, like you don't do that for a concept or somebody brainstorming. Well, what if we brought Resident Evil to the PSP? Like, no, this is like you have a working prototype. You've got a prototype, you've got art, you've probably at least made 20% of the game before you even remotely begin to announce it like that. And then the fact that they never really announced that it was canceled either, it just disappeared.
Well, I'm glad that I'm not alone. I never get to talk to other creators, so this is very like therapeutic. I'm like, I found people who understand. Like, it's so
But this is where we want to get with the podcast. Like, I very much believe like we're all in this together. It's already a very, very niche community. Let's all start working together on different projects, and it's just wholesome. We all share each other's communities. We all share each other's followers, for the use of a better term. And it's weird that we're all actually talking about the same thing, which is it's all good.
Yeah,
shit.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that working together is actually better, because people aren't going to like unsubscribe from one Resident Evil channel just to go. They're going to subscribe to both. And then when they do a collab or whatever, they get really excited because it's like, oh, these two YouTubers that love Resident Evil as much as I do are working together. This is awesome. It's celebrated and it's great. But people see it. I think YouTube used to be like that, as well as like other, Twitch and Facebook and everything else. But like now everyone's just out for themselves and no one helps anyone. I've messaged so many other creators for collaborations and nothing. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Aside from Residents of Evil, who we've got an absolutely fantastic relationship with JJ. We always share like sources and videos and content. A lot of his videos, if you look at a lot of JJ's videos, they're actually just based on our articles. He literally just reads our articles verbatim, and it's even got the link in the thing. So we've got a really good relationship with them, but nobody else has been as forthcoming. Obviously, we reached out to yourselves, and obviously we were eternally grateful you jumped at the opportunity.
Oh, I was so excited. I literally was like, oh my God, like they want me, what? And I was like, yeah. But no, Residents of Evil is like always on top of like the hint of a new anything related, and they make a video, and I'm just like, wow, they're going for it. But maybe one day they'll have me on.
Me and JJ have had some very late nights. I'll we'll hear something. Usually we always hear it around the same time, and it becomes a big messaging thing. Who can message first about the new thing that they've heard, but. But I think a lot of this actually stems back to like the old days of the RE community. Just being a fan, for several years, like back in like the old iGas days and stuff. Like the RE, like I don't know, maybe content creator part of it, people, the original, because we've kind of there's always been,
frames and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, like all of the old heads who have kind of died off, and organizations like us and yourself have, kind of taken over. Like, I remember that community being super toxic, and especially amongst the creators. And I don't know if maybe, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's a little bit of the algorithm favors whoever's the strongest, and maybe that plays into people might not wanting to work together as much because my precious algorithm. But I think a lot of it's just stigma from like the old days of the communities where the creative minds leading the community just didn't have anything to do with each other, and when they did, it was always super toxic and negative. So that's something that we've always kind of wanted to push through is we're willing to work with anybody creating content in the Resident Evil community. We're all fans. Like, if you do a Facebook metadata search of how many people like Resident Evil, I think the number is like 9.8 million. And I guarantee you there's not a Resident Evil content creator with 9.8 million exclusive followers. So I think there's a market for everybody,
Yeah. And like, even for example, with the Resident Evil 8 analysis video, I waited because I was like, I need time to think about it. I was, it was a lot to take in, and I really wanted to sort my thoughts. And I saw that Scorpion and Residents of Evil and Sphere Hunter all did, the video talking about it. And I waited even longer because I was like, oh, well, no one wants to watch that video again. And I started getting so many messages that were like, hey, we saw their video, where's yours? And it proves that they just want everybody in on the fun. And if you go to any of the, like when I watch Residents of Evil, because I have I use a different account when I'm on my PlayStation. When I watch Residents of Evil, it says viewers also watched, and Inkribin comes up, and as well as the other channels. So like it really is like a community. Well, it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, and I think a lot of people sometimes forget too that no two reviews are going to be the same. Even internally, like me and Andy's, thoughts and opinions on, our individual playthroughs of Resident Evil 3 remake were drastically different. And there's room at a table for all perspectives, and there's things that, you're going to think of that somebody else doesn't think. That's just the nature of, like content curation in general. Like there's enough, and like me personally, like I've watched, 20 different, probably 20 or 30 different, videos breaking down Resident Evil, the Resident Evil Village trailer just to see if there's something I missed, like I watched it for myself. I've been sitting on some of this information that was revealed for, almost a year. And I still learn something new anytime I watch somebody's video, because there's another angle that I didn't think of, and right or wrong, like it's still interesting to theorize about.
Yeah, it's an open discussion, and it's a good one to have because everybody does have something to say, and very drastic, different point of view sometimes.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. We're all in this together. We all want the same thing.
Well, plus we're locked in our houses. It's not like we have much else to do.
So something and it's something that we briefly spoke on earlier, was Resident Evil during the storm. I know you're massive into the older Resident Evil mods, and Residents of Evil, our friends over at Residents of Evil, have put together a video about during the storm. Was it? Yeah, during the storm. What was your initial thoughts? I take it you've seen the video. What was your initial thoughts?
Yeah, so I did record the video. I haven't edited it yet, so it'll be up on Wednesday. But I was so excited. The first thing I was like, "Is that Kevin?" And then it was like, "Kevin, oh my god!" And I love Outbreak. I cannot stress that enough. I think that's like a whole subsection of Resident Evil fans that are obsessed with Outbreak. And another thing that I always wanted in the classic games was civilians. That was something in Resident Evil 3 that blew my mind back in the day, because it was one thing in Resident Evil 2 when you see like Annette or Ada, it's like whatever, they're just part of the story. But like these characters are just normal civilians who just got caught in everything, and you got to help them. It gives you a real sense of like duty, especially when you're playing as a character who's a cop. So I don't know. I'm so excited, and I haven't looked too much into it, but they're saying that you have the mechanic of like locking doors and unlocking them of your own free will, and you have to do what you can to protect the survivors. I'm all about that. The day this comes out, I am going to play it.
Yeah, well, and
We're
that
gonna be
that
all
seems to
over
be
it.
yeah, I mean that seems to be the cool thing too. From I noticed in the snippets we've seen of the game so far, there's a scene where there's an RPD officer in a hallway, and you can go to pick up like ammunition sitting on the ground, and it's like if you pick up the ammunition, the cop will have less to defend himself with. So that's the kind of cool element of it too. Is it looks like a lot of the decisions you're going to make are going to drastically change the gameplay itself. Like in almost kind of like the zapping system. The original Resident Evil 2, but a little bit more detailed, it seems.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Like just seeing other humans walking around in a classic Resident Evil game. There's something about that that's just it's jarring, but in a good way. Just like whoa.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be 20 to 24, I think, NPCs throughout the game. So I mean, this is going to be a very busy game as far as character interaction stuff goes, which is I would have loved to have seen back in the the 90s, but I'll gladly take it today.
Oh man.
And I think just a bit of rumors and innuendo. Speaking with a guy from During the Storm, I think he's looking for a couple of NPC actors. Obviously, we've jumped all over it. Ink Ribbon, get yourself in touch with him.
Oh, I will.
Imagine
I commented on the video and he liked it, so I guess I'll have to take it a step further.
Oh, indeed. Imagine if there was a Resident Evil community game with all of the community, the main figureheads from the community.
Hey, listen, I'm working with a developer in, I think, Serbia who, for Unreal Engine, he created a survival horror template where you can make your own Resident Evil games, although don't get excited because you still need to actually know a bit of programming to get it up and running. But I'm actually working on my own games right now, and that is a fantastic idea. Make a Resident Evil game with all of the creators. In fact, I was talking to Sphere Hunter. She was interested in voicing the main character. I don't know if she still is, but I mean, just hell, put her and you guys and ROE and everybody else just straight into a game.
That's it. Have you got any of this content on your YouTube, out of curiosity, just as a splice?
It's only on my Patreon right now because it's not really ready to show to the public. It's horribly beta. Like the environments are just white textures and all that, but if you're interested, I'll show you what I'm working on.
Yeah. So obviously, we will plug that for you. So obviously, if you do want to follow our cart on it, is it just patreon.com/inkribbon?
Yeah. If you want to show a little bit of the footage, I can send you the private video link. But
just a little exclusive, just for the
all right.
Get the guys in the chat, lick their lips and all that.
All right, just give me a second to.
Yeah, no trouble.
What's funny is I actually kind of need to change my story a little bit because I decided to incorporate witches before. This was way before Resident Evil 8. Literally, I was like, okay, I don't want to rip off Resident Evil, so I'm not going to do viruses. And then, of course, Capcom bust out with that.
See, that's what happens. You bugged our chats to see what we've been talking about, and then Capcom bugs your chats to steal your game ideas.
That's it. But just as a bit of a space filling here, where can we find you, Kai, on the interwebs, whether that be, obviously, aside from YouTube, like your daily capture, your daily social media?
The best place to get a hold of me is probably Instagram. My Twitter tends to just get flooded with messages and it becomes very overwhelming. But I'm used to talking with people on Twitter. On Instagram, but either one is fine. I tend to just post on YouTube mainly, so I don't know. But you can also email me. That's the best way to get my attention if it's something really, really urgent, because not many people send me emails. I don't know if it's like that for you guys, but
oh no, we get flooded with we get flooded with email just because.
Okay, maybe don't email me. That's like stress.
So obviously, it's your man's Instagram.
Don't scroll too far because it's Instagram,
Yeah, of course. No, you got to get it done. Whoever sinks your battleship, my friend.
I sent you the link to the to the video.
Cool. Okay, we'll just pull
I've
that
been
shit
working
up
on
for you.
this. Oh, by the way, I have a software that scans your face and literally just makes a 3D model out of it, so I can make you looking like yourself 100%.
Nice.
So real quick, the game's called Red River, and it takes place in Cambodia. These were early boat tests that I did to see if I could actually make a moving boat to work with the engine. But as you can see, it does have the turn-based cameras and all of that fun stuff. And
Will it have tank controls?
Yeah.
Cool.
Although you can switch back and forth between tank controls and, like, I guess modern controls, kind of like the Resident Evil 1 remake did. Mm-hmm. And the inventory is currently being finalized. That was a really early test to see just how things worked. But here you can see, you can, examine things and
mad Silent Hill vibes on that inventory, by the way.
Yeah, so it's just me talking. But if you fast forward towards like the middle, oh wait, oh, this is before. Oh, okay, this doesn't have any spoilers in it because this is the early version. I completely redid my character. Actually, if you go back, you can see one of the games I was working on that is now canceled. I might as well just tell people about it. To the Unreal screen that showed all the thumbnails. Go forward. Here, I'll just find the.
Yeah, just give us a timestamp if you can.
Yeah, forgot I had the video open too. Go to. Oh God. Sorry.
That's all right. No worries.
Okay, go to 107.
107. 107. Right.
You'll see on the top right corner.
Do you want me to pause it or?
Yeah. You have to pause because I scrolled past it. These are all games that I've been like fiddling with and working on. But in the top right corner, you can see a game called Escape the Hive, and I actually got Milla Jovovich's face, and I was trying to make Resident Evil 1 as if it was a classic Resident Evil game, or the movie, I mean. And it turned out to be a very daunting task. It was extremely difficult and just fell apart very quickly. So I don't think I'll ever be able to release that, but I have footage of it somewhere. It uses the same engine. But yeah, I want to make Resident Evil games that are inspired by the original ones.
Is it all right for us to scroll through this here?
Yeah. All of this is completely changed now. The character looks absolutely nothing like that now. She looks so much better. I was getting really angry. But the game takes place in the 90s, although I think I've changed that to like the early 2000s. You see there's a working flashlight. You can use melee weapons, a bat or a knife or a gun or a shotgun. And this is ugly environment art because I was just testing to see.
Whoa, look at that! What is?
Yeah,
is it,
those are placeholder enemies.
Well, those are terrifying.
Yeah, and they're smart too. Look, they cornered her. You can see there,
awesome.
She's injured.
Beautiful.
But yeah, that's what I'm trying to do on top of content creation. It's a lot of work.
Indeed. So obviously, have you got a plot kind of built up for Red River, or are you just experimenting with the engine and then you'll
no. I'm working on the plot. Like I said, I'm gonna have to figure out. Well, maybe mine's different enough that I'll be okay. And this is now a record that I was working on this for a while. I guess my Patreon is too, but I'm going to be the villain because I just felt that it was the right role for me. Plus, it's my game and I want to be in it. But I am the leader of an all-male witch coven. So it's really rare to see just male witches. It's always like females. And basically dark magic has gone awry. All of his coven was killed. And now dead bodies around this fishing village are starting to come to life and come after people. And I'm trying to see if I can get them to look like they're like liquefied, like dripping water zombies. And he gives you the option to help him revive his coven to stop all of this, or you can just make your way out of the city and run away. And that's as far as I've gotten, and I'm probably gonna have to rework some of that. But I don't know how that sounds, but I think people will like it.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting concept because, like you said, like you don't really see a lot of like when anytime witchcraft or anything is portrayed, you very rarely see male figures. So that's actually like a unique thing on its own.
And also, there's a hydration mechanic. You have to keep your character hydrated.
Is that this thing here? Is it?
Yeah, that's empty. So she's currently dying of thirst. But yeah, she starts the game throwing up in the toilet because she's hungover on this party boat, and that introduces the whole, like I said, the tutorial sections. You got to walk around the boat, buy water from a vending machine, and throughout the game, you eat to regain health and drink to replenish your thirsts. And that's pretty much all.
Well, what was it? It's like a kind of like I think how Dead Rising or not Dead Rising. What was it? Dead Island.
Oh yeah.
How it starts where like I'm pretty sure, Dead Island, where like the beginning of the game, like you wake up hungover from a party and like you have to, I think, like grab like a candy bar or something off the like the bedside table next to you or something, and then like a zombie busts in your hotel room.
Yeah, it's pretty much like game design 101. Just get the player doing certain tasks so that they know how the controls work, and then send them on their way. But yeah, thank you for taking the time to look into that. No one ever cares.
No. But that's what it's all about. You're here. We're here to talk about you. We're here to talk about what's going on with you. Obviously, if you want to support the development of Red River, Kai will be doing, I guess, updates every so often. I mean, are these these monthly updates, bi-monthly updates?
Monthly, I would say. as much as I can, but I really do like the idea of all the Resident Evil content creators being in a Resident Evil game together. I think that's definitely worth looking into.
Well, I'll take my commission for that later.
Cool, perfect.
But no, that's great stuff. And again, it's great that we have creators that also want to make games, not just create videos and critique existing Resident Evil games. They're willing to at least make their own spin. I mean, look at Daymare. Daymare is a perfect example of fans making games, and I appreciate the voice acting wasn't fantastic. being English isn't the mother tongue, but a bloody good stab. Have you had a chance to check out Daymare?
Yeah, I did 5 different Let's Plays of it, and
brilliant.
I loved, and it's funny because if you look, the trained Resident Evil eye can spot assets that were meant to be for Resident Evil 3 and other places, and I commend them because what they did was very ambitious for an indie game. I think there was like 8 people that worked on it or something, and it's what they were able to do is just like, whoa, because I'm just one person, I'm working by myself, and
obviously the backstory. You know the backstory of Evader Studios and everything that. Oh, cool.
I looked into all of that. And
did you ever see any of the footage from their Resident Evil 2 Rebirth?
I think so, because there was like a couple different creators. I watched a lot of like, here's this game I'm working on type videos, and so many people have done Resident Evil 2 remakes, like Alex Lima, Rodriguez. Rod Lima. Yeah, like his was like crazy, and that led me into, I think, what Daymare ended up becoming. I saw their early videos. I don't know if they're still up now, but there's a lot of people out there making games. They're not even trying to sell them or anything. They just want to make Resident Evil 2, again or whatever.
Well, I think that was the biggest issue with, at least the Resident Evil 2 remake, was because right around the time Rebirth was getting a lot of traction was the same time like Capcom had already quietly started working on the development of it, or their own remake. And I've always mused the idea that maybe Capcom went after the fan game so hard at this point because they were afraid that if the fans could give the fans what they wanted, nobody would actually buy the remake. That's always been my, because I mean, looking at what Rebirth could have been like. I mean, it was literally a over the shoulder version of the original game. It looks like they didn't stray very. It was going to be almost shot for shot remake of the original game.
Well, I mean, this is like literally Resident Evil 2 remake. As we got it, so. I think kind of understand. Yeah,
and I think Rod Lima, because Rod Lima does a lot of, I think he done it on the Unreal Engine 3, not 4. And it's very smart of him not to publish, because I think that's what kind of put the nail in the coffin for Invader Games as they shared a public beta of it.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
You can make videos and you can show, look what I'm working on, but the moment you release it to the public, companies get very, very angry. Or if you have even hinting of intent to do it, like don't do that. But you know, it's really great for learning and stuff like that. That's I think what the primary reason for doing that is.
And you know, Capcom. I think Capcom were very, very good with Invader Games. I think they didn't they end up crediting. They ended up crediting Invader Games in Resident Evil 2 Remake at the bottom, like right at the bottom.
I think so. Yeah.
They got a couple little shout outs, and I think that I think Capcom flew all of them out to Japan. They got to sit down and talk with like on obviously not on a cease and desist terms, but on a friendly term. They got to go hang out at Capcom for a couple of days, I believe.
And I think that's just going back to how Capcom's a great company. Other companies like Square Enix or whoever just shut you down and they sent all their lawyers after you. That was Capcom extending the olive branch and saying, hey, we really respect what you did. We're going to work on our own thing. So that's
and I think that's a real good on Capcom's part, that they're not like a Disney, for example, that because Disney seems like even if they don't own the IP for it, they'll still try to find a way to sue you over something that might remotely be theirs in some manner.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, the I don't know if you followed it or not, but there was a guy that was making a Darth Vader fan film on YouTube.
Ooh.
And,
yeah.
And had clearance to do it and everything. Like they said, hey, you can't sell it. No, I think it was like 20th Century Fox is the one that ended up giving him a cease and desist over it. But, it was one of those things that like, oh, well, you can't make money off of it. You can't do this. You can't do that, but you can use the likeness. And, he, crossed all of his T's, dotted all of his I's, and then, released the fan film and then still got hit with some bullshit.
Yeah. They claimed the video, didn't they? That's what happened.
Yeah. So even though he had the music custom written for his series, 20th Century Fox, I think, owns the rights to all of John Williams' original scores that he wrote for the Star Wars franchise. And they said because like there's like literal like 8 seconds that sounds vaguely similar to the Imperial March, that they own the copyrights to music that he purchased for, like the guy literally owns the music. He put it in his movie. And here comes, I think, like I said, I'm pretty sure it's 20th Century Fox is like, oh, no. We know you own the music, but we actually own the music. And he's like, well, I don't know if he actually even fought it or not. But yeah, they kind of screwed him over bad. But
like, how heartbroken must he be as a fan, that passionate, to have them just spit in his face like that?
Yeah, exactly. And, and I get, like, don't get me wrong, I understand protecting intellectual property to a degree. Like, obviously, like, if you created something, you want people to respect it and, respect the fact that you created it. But at the end of the day, like, there's, like, a lot of times, a lot of these projects are just, like, free advertising. Like, I mean, look at Nintendo, how hardcore they go after some people for streaming their games on services. Mm-hmm. I that just blows my mind. Like, can you imagine if like Capcom, like just tomorrow, like sent out, across the board, you got one, we got one, Row, Sphere Hunter, everybody just got a cease and desist letter going like, hey, can't use our content to make stuff anymore. Like,
I think they've been very fair actually. Like we use Biohazard, Residents of Evil, uses the fucking Resident Evil box art guy and they make merch. I don't know how they get away with it, but
yeah, I think Capcom's been extremely fair, with
Kai uses ink ribbon. Oh my god.
Shit. But I think that speaks a lot to the company and knowing their market and hopefully realizing that at the end of the day, like, what kills me a little bit is some of these companies are like, oh, well, these people are making money off of our property, and it's like, okay, yeah, I get it, like. We might make a little bit here and there from ad revenue or subscription, stuff like that. But you can't tell me that, for most content creators, I would assume, 10,000 subscribers or less. Like, you can't tell me that my 10,000 subscribers are the reason why your multi-billion-dollar company is about to go bankrupt. Like, like when Disney offers these cease and desist, or Nintendo does cease and desist, and they're like, well, they're impeding on our profits, and it's like, but are they? Like, I don't think Snowman Games 27 on YouTube is putting a dent in Disney profit because he streamed a Frozen game. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, at the end of the day, if nothing else, like, yeah, we might get some kickbacks from the respective platforms we work on, but it's all free advertising.
Yeah, we do amazing.
Every time I do a video about a specific game, there's always at least 1 or 2 comments of people who are like, oh my God, I'm going to go buy this game because you really got me sold on it, or you make me want to know more about it. And it's like, hey, that probably made more money than my video did for the company in question.
Yeah. I'm not saying, like, we're some like marketing or, we're out here slinging games for companies left and right. But I mean, I know of just a handful of playthroughs Andy's done of Daymare. I know for a fact we've probably sold Daymare at least 2 or 3 copies of it. Just from people going like, what the hell is this? It looks like Resident Evil, and then telling them what it is, and they're like, oh yeah, I have to go buy that and check it out. I mean, at the end of the day, like, you would think that they would want, most of these companies would want a fleet of these people doing it. I'd go out of, like, if I was Disney, I'd go out of my way to make sure that people were streaming, Disney stuff, especially trying to like sling Disney Plus right now.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, I'm very anti big evil corporations, and like, they don't seem to understand what some things mean to people, because like how I'm a game developer and I went to school for that. It's literally because of Resident Evil 2 that I pursued it, because I was so affected by that game in the best way. I mean, the environments, the graphics, the everything, I studied it and I wanted to know more. And it not only launched me into that, but also like as a gamer, it opened my eyes to a lot of video games that I never would have tried otherwise. So, they have to respect that fans are on that side too. Like, these games aren't just games to a lot of people. They're a lot more. And I don't have to tell you guys that.
Yeah. Like, I mean, we got quite a substantial amount of growth through the lockdown period, where people are like, do you know what? The world's really shit out there at the moment. And I can come into your streams, or I can watch your content. And it brings me to it's an escapism. It gives me a chance to chat with like-minded Resident Evil fans. And me being 25 years old, I've spoke about this in the past, liking Resident Evil 2, the original, and wanting to speak to someone about at school when I was in like your equivalent elementary school. No one knew what the fuck I was talking about. So like, to finally hone that platform and speak with like-minded people, especially for me, it's been like a massive like mental health boost, especially, we're all locked in. We can't really do a lot. So I'm sure you feel the same, Kai.
Oh, it's amazing, because I was actually going to say the exact same thing. I remember like trying to talk to people about Resident Evil and nobody cared, because they're like, okay, cool. Or they'll be like, oh my God, Alice is my favorite character. And I'm just like, never mind. But when I do YouTube, I don't have to explain what it is. I just tell people, and then they give it back. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys understand me. Like, I found my people. This is amazing. Because like, I get so excited sometimes talking about this stuff, and like, it's really cool to see your audience. I see comments like, oh my God, I got excited when you were getting excited. And oh, it's so great. And it is definitely like mental healing, especially like, I don't know if you guys are, but I'm totally an introvert. I don't do well in big social situations with a lot of people. I get very like catatonic and want to run away. But on this, I'm just talking to a camera and typing on a keyboard, and it's a lot more palatable for me, but I can still have that interaction, and it's so nice.
Yeah. No, I would be inclined to agree. What about you, Jesse?
I mean, I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm a weird mix of like extra and introverted. Like I like being around people, but I also hate people at the same time. So, and I like, I think it was Charles Schultz that said, I love mankind. I just hate people. And that's kind of how I am. Like, I like being out and about with people, but I don't like being there extended periods of time. Like, I kind of, but like, I mean, something like this is nice, especially, I guess like the biggest hurdle for me usually is trying to find something to connect with people on, because I've got, a particular interest set, and, it's not widely spread out. And that, it's kind of the whole reason why, when I started the page back last year, like that was kind of the whole purpose of it was, most of my friends, like I have one friend that I grew up with that I talked to that, played Resident Evil with me, like we played 4 and stuff all the time on the GameCube. But really, like, out of my friends growing up or friends I've made throughout the years, he's been really the only person I could, ever like talk with Resident Evil about. Like, my brother, me played 5 a little bit growing up, but that was still just usually me by myself. So I was like, well, I'll make a page. I'm in a couple of Resident Evil groups. If people, want to talk Resident Evil, we can do so. And then, here we are a year later, and that's all I do is talk. So,
everyone's like, "What other games do you play?" I'm like, well, I can't really say, to be honest.
Yeah, but that can go both ways, because I've also pigeonholed myself without meaning to, because like I like other games too. I definitely, Resident Evil's way above everything else, but once in a while I want to talk about something else, and when I do, nobody cares. Like I'll post a video on another game and they're just like,
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same here. We're streaming, because we've become so dedicated, especially the classic Resident Evils. I get absolute stupid amount of views. The second I veer a little bit off and I go, do you know what? Let's try Dead Space, or let's try something like Bomb. Where's Resident Evil 2? Where's Resident Evil 3, the original? Show us the seamless. But obviously, we're really grateful for you coming on today. It's actually aside from Resident Evil, it's the first time we've had an interaction with another sizable Resident Evil creator. So we're very grateful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, anytime you guys want to have me back, I'm happy to do this. I was literally like, oh God, like it's gonna be like a lot of talking and blah blah blah, and now I'm like, oh, it's been 2 hours. I didn't even realize.
As we said, if you want to find Ink Ribbon, he's a massive Resident Evil creator over on YouTube, youtube.com/inkribbon. And if you just reread your social media handles out, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm Kaikun2236, and on everything else, I'm either Ink Ribbon or Ink Ribbon Games.
Brilliant. Well, as I said, we really appreciate your time. Sorry, was you going to say something there, Jesse?
No.
That's splendid. Well, we really appreciate your time today, Kai. Best of luck, of course, with your journey to 100K. You are 20,000 off, which I mean, what did we hit? 67 or something like that. So I know what it's like getting past that 50K, and it's like the build up. So yeah, we're obviously super happy for you, and yeah, we'd love to do more stuff with you in the future.
Cool. I look forward to it.
Yeah, maybe since I think we're sitting at 68 right now, maybe we'll have some friendly competition who can get to 100K. who can hit 100K.
Hey, you guys should also come. We'll figure something to do on my channel on YouTube and let them know, hey, go on Facebook. Because like I said, some people don't use YouTube, some people don't use Facebook, so some people use both.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll appreciate.
We'll be happy to do anything we can.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Well, thank you to everybody who's tuned in for this podcast. Have a good one. Look after yourselves, and we'll be in touch with the next one.
Bye, guys.